We've now covered what luminosity masks are and how they're made. We also saw methods for evaluating them, selecting the right one, and using them in conjunction with adjustment layers. So we're ready to begin working with the different kinds of image adjustments that can be made with luminosity masks. As I mentioned earlier, luminosity masks, like all other masks, serve to guide and control where and to what degree image adjustments are applied. Luminosity masks can be used to control adjustments for contrast and brightness, saturation, vibrance, color balance, clarity, and sharpening, among other things. We'll begin in this chapter with contrast, brightness, and tonal balancing in higher contrast images. Tone or luminosity-based adjustment layers are all grouped together in the Adjustment Layer menu in Photoshop. They include brightness, contrast, levels, curves, and exposure. Curves, levels, and brightness contrast are also grouped together on the TK Actions panel. All of these adjustments are tools for making similar kinds of adjustments to brightness and contrast. I only rarely use the exposure adjustment, and we'll come back to the brightness contrast adjustment in the next chapter. For now, we'll focus on using curves or levels for balancing high contrast. Similar results can be accomplished with each, so which one you use is largely a matter of preference. Curves is a little more complex but provides more control, while levels is simpler but provides less control. The important thing to remember is that there's no one recipe that works for every image. Skilled developing takes practice, and every image is different. What works for one image often won't work for the next. I spent a lot of time experimenting with adjustments on every one of my images. You just don't see that part in the videos because I practice first to figure out the right adjustments. If I don't, the videos would be much longer, totally confusing, and not helpful at all. Okay, let's start making some adjustments. Often, we have the need to balance or reduce contrast by darkening lights and lightening darks. This is especially common in landscape photographs with a sky that is much brighter than the land. Let's look at a few different cases. First of all, with high contrast images, if you try to decrease contrast with a levels adjustment, you'll find that any movement of the lights or dark sliders blocks up the shadows or blows out the highlights. And the only thing you can do is either darken midtones or lighten midtones, and you're not able to achieve what you want to achieve. This is where a curves adjustment layer has an advantage, because you don't have to change the highlight or black sliders, and you can simply lighten the dark areas and darken the lighter tones. This kind of reverse S-curve does lower the overall contrast, but it leaves the image looking somewhat flat and muddy. Let's try something similar, only using luminosity masks. So I'm going to duplicate this image, and then I'm going to delete that curves adjustment layer, and we'll now start over again using luminosity masks and levels adjustments. I'll start with darkening the light sky, and I'll evaluate some lights masks. So that's a lights 1. It is mostly restricted to the sky, but it does bleed over into some portions of the land. So I'll turn off the preview and evaluate a lights 2. I think this will do a better job of isolating my adjustments to the sky. So now I'll create a levels adjustment layer with that selection active. And this creates the levels adjustment layer with the mask imprinted with that selection. You'll notice now with that mask controlling the adjustment, I now have some room to work with the levels. So I can take the dark slider and begin moving it over, and that will darken the sky. And I can further work with the midtone slider if I need to fine-tune it a little bit. Next, I need to find a luminosity selection to work with the dark landscape. But I don't want to make my selection based on the current state of the image, because I've now darkened my sky and I want to create a selection that'll leave the sky mostly out of it. So before I make a selection, I'm going to turn off the visibility of this adjustment so my sky becomes light again, and now I'll evaluate some darks selections. This is a darks 1. It is isolated mostly to the land, but it will bleed over into some of the darker portions of the sky. So let's take a look at the darks 2. and view it. And that's going to do a better job of isolating the adjustment just to the land. So now I'll make another levels adjustment, and I can turn back on my sky adjustment. And now I can work with my landscape adjustment, which has the darks luminosity mask imprinted into the mask. And again, I have some room in my histogram to work with the sliders because of the way that that mask is controlling the adjustment. So I can slide over my highlight slider until I think it looks okay, and then I might want to bring back my midtones, and now I've lightened my landscape. One of the challenges in darkening a sky and lightening a dark landscape is getting the exposure values at the transition zone to look right. Oftentimes the land looks too light against the darker sky. This is an easy fix. I would simply choose a white brush and set it to a low opacity, somewhere down around 20%. And now I'll go to the mask of the initial levels adjustment that darkened the sky, and I will very gently feather some of that darkening from the sky down into the land so that they blend better. So now let's view the before and after of that image. Before the luminosity mask adjustments and after the contrast balancing adjustments. And let's compare these results to the results from using just the curves adjustment layer. So this is the result in the first image that I was able to achieve with just a single curves adjustment layer and no luminosity mask. And this is the result that I was able to achieve by using luminosity masks in conjunction with levels adjustment layers. You can see I have much more control, and the final result has better color and contrast and is more pleasing.